Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 118. Skin of Evil.
Welcome to another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Kenneth T. Ray.
And I'm Jonathan T. Champion.
All right, let's do the alternate open. I'm not sure which one we're going to go with. Let's try this one. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, hold on.
Welcome to Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I would say it's good to have you with us, but it's not. I don't need you. I don't need any of you. But I'm so lonely. Ken,
Yeah.
you okay? You should never eat pretzels when we record.
That'll really take it out of you.
Yeah.
That was very good, by the way, though. I like your Armus.
Thank you.
Yeah, no
I like
problem
my
at all.
Armus too. Yeah.
Who doesn't like their Armus? Skin of Evil. Should we say what the episode is if people haven't picked up on it?
We sure should. Yeah. Skin of Evil, and nearing the end of season 1.
That is still amazing to me. It seems like only 3.5 months ago that we started.
It kind of was.
Yeah, and now here we are 3.5 months later. Go figure. Hey, before we get into today's show and Skin of Evil and all that it entails, want to remind people about a very cool thing that we're part of. We're part of, Roddenberry Entertainment, which every now and then still kind of stymies me, but we are. And so that sort of folds us into this whole big list of other stuff that you can find at Roddenberry.com. There's stuff there you can buy. There's stuff there you can, check out. There's philanthropy things. There's a whole community aspect to it. But we're not talking about those. We're talking about all the other sort of properties, I guess, that Roddenberry is part of, like 1701 News and Earth Final Conflict, which, man, I loved Earth Final Conflict when it was on. I don't know. Anyway, there's that. Andromeda. And then there's like the cartoon kind of stuff, or not cartoon, but comic kind of stuff. Everything from the funny things like Rod and Barry. I'll wait for that to settle in. And Worth and Days Missing. All kinds of stuff to check out. So, if you find yourself sitting around one day going, man, the internet is just bereft of interesting things. Oh, you're wrong, my friend. Roddenberry.com is the place to find a lot of it.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So, if you'll indulge me, I've got some trivia for today's show.
Do you really?
I do.
Huh.
And actually, Ken, I not only do I have a lot of trivia, but I've got discovered documents, and I've got more trivia that I want to come back to after you do the recap. So this would just be a chock-full episode. But we'll kick things off here by saying that Joseph Scanlon, who directed The Big Goodbye, directed this show based on a script by Joseph Stefano and Hannah Louise Shearer. It was originally titled The Shroud. So when you go look at the discovered documents, you'll see a lot of them reference The Shroud. All right, now let's talk about Denise Crosby. I mentioned this last episode that actually Symbiosis was her final episode that she shot, but clearly this is the final episode that she appears in. So remember, this one was produced before Symbiosis. And let's put a couple of things to rest. There are rumors and conjecture about how and why she left the show, and it pretty much comes down to what she has said over and over again. She didn't like the way the character was being written. She wasn't given enough to do, and she asked relatively early on to be released from her contract, and they did. The production staff allowed her to leave, and she did, and that was that. And it was kind of bittersweet that she felt like she had good material to work with here in her final episode. Now, speaking of that good material she had to work with, Denise says that she is very proud of her scene with Worf. Too bad actors tend to get their best material when the characters are killed off. Just ask Leonard Nimoy. And we also want to talk about Tasha Yar's demise and how it was written, because this went through a number of hands, not the least of which was Gene Roddenberry's hands. And Ken, you might remember in our supplemental with David Gerald, we talked a little bit about Leonard Maizlish, and he was Gene's lawyer at the time. So the question then becomes, was Tasha Yar's demise written by Leonard Maizlish? Well, there are rumors to the effect, and if you heard our David Gerald interview, then you know that there was some abraded and hurt feelings on the show in the production staff. And I do have a discovered document from the WGA, from the Writers Guild of America, inquiring about Maislish's position on the show, saying, hey, we've heard that you have somebody who is a writer on the show, Mr. Maislish. Why isn't he a member of the WGA? And why isn't he paying dues? And why isn't he credited? And they got a very curt reply back from Gene, which I also have in discovered documents, stating that no, he is not a writer. Definitively, he is not a writer. So we may have to revisit that relationship and get additional viewpoints down the road. Now, two actors brought life to the role of Armus, Mark McChesney as the body and Ron Gans as the voice. The oil slick that Riker slips into was, and bear with me here, it is hydroxypropyl methylcellulose. You're welcome.
Very tasty.
Not Metamucil, as he is quoted as saying, but it was the methylcellulose and ink, which, I'm sure just got everywhere. Now, McChesney was standing on a grate in the floor of the set, and he was raised and lowered in and out of the goo. He didn't have an air tank when they did that. He had to hold his breath while he was in there. And, I don't know if they would allow you to do that now. It was all practical special effects. There were no opticals to create Armus. And, hey, we've got a new character. Walker Boone arrives as Chief Engineer Lynch. And,
wait, whoa, hold on. Chief Engineer Lynch. I'm sorry. He's actually, you may remember him as Lieutenant Commander Leland T. Lynch. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, yes.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't recognize the name.
But thank goodness we've solved the chief engineer problem once and for all.
I know.
This guy is good. Actually, you might have had Argyle back. I know that's kind of weird to hear, but in our discovered documents, we actually have notes between Bob Justman and Maurice Hurley suggesting Argyle rather than yet another new character. And we also have, I got a ton of stuff for this episode, so I wanted to get it out there. We have a shooting schedule. I found it interesting that they shot all the bridge and ship interiors first, holodeck scene in the middle, and then all the scenes on the planet Varga at the end. And it's kind of the opposite of the way that we saw a lot of that stuff done on the original series, where they get all the other stuff done first and then come back and finish up on the bridge.
Writing for Tasha Yar really seems to be hitting its stride. Let's see what a well-written Tasha Yar is up to this week.
Prologue. The Enterprise is on its way to pick up Counselor Troy. She's in Lucky Shuttlecraft 13 on her way back from a conference. You ever seen Troy at a conference? It's kind of fun. The Enterprise is cruising at impulse power because some work is being done realigning the dilithium crystals. Worf and Tasha talk over the ship's martial arts competition in 3 days. Yar asks Worf for a bit of help practicing. He says, sure, and that she is favored in the ship's pool. Yar seems touched that Worf has bet on her. So, we'll see how things go in 3 days. The Enterprise receives an emergency call from the shuttle. Systems are failing and it's being buffeted by something. They're still about an hour away from the shuttle at impulse, and Picard calls main engineering, where he gets Lieutenant Commander Leland T. Lynch. Lieutenant Commander Leland T. Lynch says it'll be at least 20 minutes before they have warp. Picard says they don't have that kind of time. So Lieutenant Commander Leland T. Lynch says he'll align them by hand. Whatever. Things are getting tense for the shuttle. It's caught in the gravity of an uninhabited planet. Lieutenant Commander Leland T. Lynch says it'll be at least 3 minutes before they can go to warp, which is at least enough time for the opening credits. Act 1. The Enterprise has lost contact with Counselor Troy's ship, and Lieutenant Commander Leland T. Lynch is still aligning the dilithium crystals. They skip the final check and gun it. The planet where the shuttle went down is a barren rock. Enough atmosphere to get by, but no vegetation and no life form readings. Not even from the shuttle. Oh wait, there's life in the shuttle, but it seems to be buried under a lot of debris. They can't beam anyone up. Riker puts together an away team consisting of Data, Dr. Crusher, and Tasha Yar. I hope she doesn't get injured. She's got that martial arts competition in 3 days. The away team beams down close to the shuttle. The only thing between them and it is a sort of puddle of black ooze. But when they try to go around it, it moves to block their path, no matter which way they go. Riker lets Picard know that they have a problem, though they can't say what kind of problem. They leave a frequency open to the ship. Data says there's nothing about this thing that would read as life to the Enterprise crew. No known proteins, no circulatory system, no brain. Yet it seems to keep following them. It may be alive. Very good, Tin Man, says the ooze, as a sort of humanoid shape takes form from its surface. Act 2. The ooze thing has a name. It's Armus. Picard thinks Armus may have brought the shuttle down. Riker explains that they have injured people on the shuttle and that they would like to help them. Armus is not interested in letting them help the people on the shuttle, though. Instead, they can leave. Yar says, look, we're not going to hurt you, but we are going to help our people. Armus warns her not to try it, but try it she does, and is knocked sideways as a result. Riker and Data open fire on Armus while Dr. Crusher goes to check on Tasha. All to no avail. The phasers have no effect on Armus, and Tasha is dead. Well, come on, it's the 24th century. Dead's just like a thing, right? The away team is beamed back to the Enterprise. Crusher goes to work reviving Yar, and it doesn't work. After several attempts to revive her over what seemed like several minutes, Tasha Yar is pronounced dead. On the planet, Armus is enveloping the shuttlecraft. Inside, Troy is coming to and trying to call the Enterprise, but Armus is blocking her transmission. Instead, Armus starts goading her. I killed your friend. Want to know why? Troy says there's no point since the act was without reason. Exactly, says Armus. It was just fun. Troy says that's not true. Exactly. Armus thought it would be amusing, but it wasn't. Armus agrees. It was too easy. He wanted Yar to suffer. Troy says Armus won't get what he wants, to break the spirit of the Enterprise crew. Oh, is that what I want? Asks Armus. Cool. Then that's what I'll have. On the Enterprise, senior staff is kind of freaking out, though Picard tells them to stow it until they free the people on the shuttlecraft. Picard names Worf acting chief of security. Riker figures Armus is letting everyone except Tasha live for a reason. It knows they won't leave while there are still people on the shuttle. LaForge says he may be able to see something in the creature that they can't see. He'll be on Riker's next away team, though Worf says he won't. The goal is not to engage Armus, but to free the people on the shuttle. That can best be accomplished with him at tactical. Act 3. The away team finds Armus all over the shuttle. Armus is taunting Troy. No, you can't talk to your friends, because keeping you quiet causes them distress. Troy quizzes Armus on why he was surprised that members of her community would come back for her. Is it because he was abandoned by the ones who make him so angry? That touches a nerve. Or it would if Armus had a nervous system. It moves away from the shuttle and towards the away team. At tactical, Worf notices a dip in the energy field covering the shuttle, though it's back to full now. Picard wants them to keep an eye on that. Riker tries to start negotiations with Armus. Armus allows Dr. Crusher to talk by communicator with Troy. Troy says she's fine. Crusher begs to help the crew, but instead Armus starts toying with the away team, stealing Data's instruments and knocking Geordi's visor from his face, foiling any attempts to help until they stop trying to help. Then the whole thing gets boring for Armus. He goes back to enveloping the shuttle, talking over the emptiness that plagues him. He explains to Troy what he is. He was part of a race that perfected a way to bring all negativity to the surface, a skin of evil, which they shed and dumped on this planet. Troy says Armus has her pity, which makes him angry. Angry enough to drag Riker away from the away team. Armus has enveloped Riker, and if anybody does anything, Armus says he will kill Riker. Act 4. Worf has picked up a pattern on the energy field around the shuttle. It seems to drop when Armus is dealing with Troy. Picard decides to beam down to try to talk to Deanna. Armus torments Troy. I've got Riker. He's a fighter. You should feel it. She says she does. He really is just torturing her. Captain Picard is now on the scene. Armus hops off the shuttle to talk to him. He won't say outright whether Riker is alive, though Data suggests that death is boring for Armus at this point, so Riker's probably still among the living. Armus chides Picard. Don't you want to negotiate? No, I want to see my people on the shuttle. Well, entertain me. Picard says no. So Armus says he'll do it himself. He takes control of Data, forcing the android to point a phaser at the heads of everyone on the away team, including his own. He says the doctor will have to choose who dies, but she refuses. Data says he won't feel guilty about whoever dies since it'll be Armus doing the killing, not him. Data also says Armus should be destroyed. And Picard's had enough. He says he and the away team are leaving. Armus taunts him. I thought you cared about your people. Picard says he does, which is why he has to see his people. Barring that, he's out. So Armus expels a GUI Riker. Act 5. Riker's alive and fine, though he's covered with Armus. Now Picard says he wants to see the people in the shuttle. Picard orders the away team to beam up. He'll stay behind. Alone, Armus tells Picard that he wants off this rock. Picard says he has the means, but first he needs to see the people on the shuttle. Armus relents, beaming Picard to Troy. He tells her about the weakening field when Armus is enveloping the shuttle. She thinks having to face the source of his anger makes Armus weak. And there's the plan. Back outside the shuttle, Picard starts quizzing Armus about being abandoned. The more he faces his anger, the weaker the field surrounding the shuttle gets. When it drops low enough, the Enterprise beams up the people in the shuttle, and then the captain. The Enterprise sets orange cones around Armus's planet. A memorial is held for Tasha, presided over by Tasha. The end.
You know, Ken, I can't remember the last time I enjoyed a GUI Riker.
That is going to be a euphemism for something that people should never say out loud. I feel fairly certain, and I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. This is usually the part of the show where we have just sort of our random notes. It's our stream of consciousness notes. Like, hey, did you notice that thing? That thing was weird. That was crazy. We don't have a lot of those this time, because I think we both felt like this episode was bigger and deserved kind of deeper discussion. So I just have a handful of notes that we can knock through. And one of the first things that I noticed that I was really impressed by, Armus, the oil slick with no apparent organs, is millions of years old, probably speaks perfect English, and is deeply introspective, and he has a sense of irony and understands American pop culture like The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, calling him the Tin Man, that's, generally speaking, you get hung up on, wow, everybody speaks English more than I do. Mm-hmm. Calling him the Tin Man actually did bother me because he's not tin.
Yeah.
And it does seem unlikely that Armus would have seen The Wizard of Oz.
He's had a lot of time to kill.
Well, I guess he has, but he hasn't had a lot of people around to, I don't know. Maybe he enveloped everything that was on the shuttle, and maybe they had a copy.
Just happened to have a copy of
The Wizard of Oz there.
With them.
I'm going to try out this Tin Man thing. See, on a normal episode, you're right, this is a bigger episode than this. On a normal episode, though, Data would have cocked his head and said, Tin Man?
Right, exactly. Yeah. I did have to wonder, though, when he talks about the Titans and we kind of get a little of the history of Armus, could those beings have been related to any of the races that we've met before in TOS or the animated series or any of that? Because we're constantly running into these super advanced, super old aliens that have abilities far beyond anything we could comprehend. And I kept thinking it's not a bad tie-in, potentially.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of who it might be, though. I mean, there were the Metrons.
Mm-hmm. The Metrons.
Metrons,
yeah.
Okay. It could be the Metrons. That's right. The Metron is the voice of the one true God. I'm sorry.
Right.
That's dogma all over me there. So it could be the Metrons. It could be the God thing that was on the animated series. Yeah, I can't remember. Voiced by Nichelle Nichols.
And Bem. Yeah.
Yes, okay. It could be that. Or it could be the God thing above the Edo. Mm-hmm. I mean, so we might have run across them before. Of course, they could also be a long dead race that, it turns out they needed their skin of evil to actually survive.
They need their pain.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
All right. Some production things that I wanted to point out. So Marina Sirtis took losing Denise Crosby from the show particularly hard. You may remember that they had actually been up for each other's roles Maybe you don't remember that from the discussion that we had at the very beginning, where Marina Sirtis was up for Tasha Yar and Denise Crosby was up for Deanna Troi, and they became friends. And it's interesting to know that when they shot that scene, so Denise was on set doing her lines, and Marina's reaction, and I wanted to bring it up here because I thought it was great. You know, she really is connected to that scene, and so that was really happening for them on set, and I thought it helped to really sell that scene. And then one of the other kind of production notes that I thought of that I wanted to include here, and that's something I didn't want to talk about in the trivia. So Gene Roddenberry argued for a quick death for Yar, appropriate for a security officer. And it originally came even earlier in the episode. So they kind of got to work in that dialogue between Yar and Worf about the martial arts competition a little later, kind of stretch that out, move her death at least a little further away from the opening. But Gene also argued against killing Armus out of any kind of revenge or retaliation. And there were a lot of mixed opinions on the production staff of what to do. And in fact, this is another one of those examples where the script wasn't entirely done, except for just within a few days before the cameras started to roll. And many felt that the end product wasn't great, wasn't as good as it could have been. But I guess we'll discuss that coming up.
One assumes that this episode of Mission Log is from the filterless pack, because it is certainly not Lotar.
So one of the things that we do, or one of the things that we don't do actually, is we don't check each other's notes. We like to keep our discussion fresh. We like to keep it real. We like to keep it like we just both sat and watched an episode of Star Trek together, and now we're talking about it, without really much prep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Occasionally I wish we didn't do that. It's an interesting idea that you just brought up before we went from there to here. What do you think about the idea of them killing Armus out of revenge? I mean, this seems to be Gene Roddenberry really again staking his claim, putting his flag in the ground on who we are. Yeah. Right. I mean, and part of me says that's just a fascinating idea. It never even occurred to me that Picard would kill him, that Picard would try to kill Armus out of revenge. But when you mention that, I'm kind of thinking that's very much not Picard, and yet, I mean, he is now faced with an incredible loss. He has lost a member of his crew for the first time, I think, right? Have we? Yeah. No. There was a guy in engineering that got killed one time. But he hasn't. Well, I mean, plenty of times. But I mean, he hasn't had like just somebody single out a member of his crew and just kill them just for the sake of killing them. And I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I mean, it might have been a more satisfying end in a way, and it might have been a more troubling end in a way. That just never even crossed my mind that Picard might do that.
Well, let's think about this from a story point of view, because I never thought that Picard would do that either. But if you had ended the episode with, even under duress, even if Picard had not wanted to kill Armus, but for some reason they had to, take this back to the original series, it would have been a moment where they realize that the Enterprise is in danger and they can't, even if they don't want to kill Armus, they can't get out of there unless they kill Armus. That would have been the dilemma. That would have been the only way to justify it.
No, justifying it, though, doesn't interest me at all. If they had gotten back up to the ship and Picard had ordered them to fire on it,
Picard would have never done that. And I don't think Kirk would have done that either.
And that's what I think would have made it a very interesting story. I mean, not that it's not an interesting story anyway, but I mean, if you actually come to that point where you draw that out of those characters, those iconic characters, they would never do that in a million years characters, although we can certainly... I think movies are bad for Star Trek. Do you want to jump the timeline?
Sure.
He's going to kill the Borg in First Contact, whether they deserve it or not. That's just going to happen. Now, I won't spoil it for... No, remember? He has that whole fight with Alfre Woodard about,
Yeah.
I mean, he's just hell-bent on vengeance at that point. That is what he is all about. Now he comes to, I'm just spoiling the heck out of First Contact. It's been out for like 20 years. If you haven't seen it, that's on you. Okay. Right. Same thing happens with Kirk in Star Trek 6, right? I mean, he's kind of out for vengeance. Well, not out for vengeance. He's just settled in his hate. Now, of course, he does grow out of it as well, but I mean, there are those moments where you think, wow, these guys have lost their principles. And I'm wondering, is that something they would ever do in the TV series, or is that just a movie thing? Do movies have to be so big that you'll go ahead and do that? I think had Skin of Evil happened in a theater instead of in front of your television, would we have had that moment where we thought Picard was actually going to lose it?
No, I think it may be in a movie, but I think in this case it would have hurt things dramatically because you don't get to have the farewell to Tasha. You don't get to end on that. Then you just end with this really bizarre killing that...
I'm retconning all over the place. So he kills, and then they go on the holodeck, and then she says something about, how wonderful and how good and blah, blah, blah Picard is, right after he's just done this horrible thing. That adds...
And whatever killed me, please don't take revenge on it.
That'd be great, because I know you would never do that.
Right.
Kind of what a dad would be like if I had a dad.
Right.
Oh, this is awkward. This is... Turn that off.
No, I think it would have. It wouldn't have played right at all. Okay. I would have never believed it out of Picard.
Yeah,
and I think the only thing that is, out of those story notes that could have played out differently, it's sort of like the old bait and switch that we got with Star Trek 2, where you open the movie killing Spock because everybody was anticipating it.
Yeah,
but then you say, well, we didn't really kill Spock. Wait 90 minutes. Now we're going to kill Spock.
And now he's really dead.
Now he's really, really dead. Yeah.
All right. I apologize because we're debating something that never actually happened. That's just that's a fascinating idea to me. And I'm not going to say it would have been better that way, and I'm not going to say it would have been worse that way. I will say it would have added nuance. It would have added different things to the characters that just never were there. But it's very much in keeping with what Gene Roddenberry said he wanted Next Gen to be, that it doesn't even come up on the screen. That there's not even a moment of them going, well, now we have to kill this thing, right? Because it's a jerk.
Right.
Which is really pretty much what that would have been about. Yeah, jerk might be a little weak because it did kill Tasha. That's more than being a jerk.
It is. But they put the orange cones out. You're right.
Yeah, they did.
They actually said that they were doing it.
Yep.
So, I think the only way they would have actually killed or just turned that ship around and unloaded a volley of photon torpedoes at that planet, which probably would have been a bad idea. It might have made Armus stronger. We don't know.
Good point, that.
But I think the only way they would have figured out and then killed Armus is under dire circumstances.
Well, that's boring.
Well... All right. Well, let's talk about the other stuff in this episode.
You mean the stuff that was actually in the episode?
Stuff that was actually in there,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, Tasha's death. So watching that, I got flooded with a million questions and ideas. And I thought it was so interesting to think about that moment because it is, for dramatic purposes, it feels like, okay, well, how are we going to say a goodbye to an actor / character? Oh, here, we'll tack this thing in. But in the world of Star Trek, in the context of Star Trek, boy, did I just think that was rife for discussion. First of all, I wanted to know why she decided to record it and when she decided to record it. She's in her uniform.
Yep.
So she did it after she joined Starfleet. She did it after getting assigned to this particular crew.
Yes.
So does she do that then every time she gets a new assignment? Say, okay, well, I got a new captain. I got a new first officer. I got to figure out who I'm going to be friends with. I got to figure out who to say goodbye to. So
bear in mind, she didn't do it right when she got to the Enterprise, though, because she's telling them all what she's learned from them.
Yeah, right.
So this is like every now and then, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So do you regularly update that thing?
And does everybody?
Yeah, right. Does everybody do that?
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, she did say as she began it that if they're watching this, then she's dead and she probably died, in the line of duty. Mm-hmm. So that kind of makes a bit more sense. I mean, most of the people, you assume that, we joke about red shirts all the time and how quickly they die and how easily they go. But then somebody else gets wise and says, well, actually, statistically, red shirts don't die that often. nor that unexpectedly.
Right.
She's putting herself, she's at the front line. She's always in harm's way, right? Especially at the beginning of the season when she's drawing a phaser on anything that moves.
Right.
And so she may have more of a sense of her mortality. I mean, just because, part of her job is to get between anything that might kill anybody else on the ship and her.
Right.
and it and them. You get what I'm saying? She's basically, she might die at any time. Right. And so, she'll go and record those, I guess.
But every now and then you would have to.
I guess you
keep
would.
that thing up to date. But then that's where I think the technology intersecting with her ability and decision to do that. This is where I think it gets really interesting. So the other questions that popped into mind were, well, did she record more than one? So you have that group of friends who you hope are at your memorial service, but then do you have another hologram for her civilian friends, for other people, for people on the lower decks that maybe the bridge officers don't know she hangs out with? That's a whole thing. And if that is the case, is the holodeck playing back the parts that are relevant for those people who are assembled there? Is the holodeck making any kind of decision or editing process? Think about it. What if one of those people who Tasha is addressing had died on that same mission? Or if Tasha was leaving a message with somebody that those people had never heard of? So does she record? Say, okay, I've got my Picard message, I got my Troy message, I got my Riker message, but maybe one of those people didn't make it back, or maybe there's somebody else here who I didn't record a message for. Is the holodeck thinking this through?
I'm sorry, I'm picturing, I wish they had added something in. And to you, Lieutenant Commander Leland T. Lynch.
Yes.
You taught me the importance of knowing who you are and letting everybody else know.
And letting everybody else know. Yes.
Yeah. It would have been actually kind of funny, right, if she had just thrown in some name. And to you, Ensign Sanchez.
Right.
Ensign. Do we know it? Do we have a... Oh, pause. Can we get Ensign Sanchez up here, please? I feel like he should be here.
Chief Engineer Argyle, wherever you may be.
And Chief Engineer... lady from the second episode.
Right.
And Chief Engineer other guy.
Right.
You're right. She would have to make a whole tape just for all the chief engineers.
All the engineers, yeah. But think about it. So Tasha records it, but the holodeck interpolates it. It puts it together. And if so, this raises a really fascinating discussion about death and remembrance. I mean, today... people leave video messages before they die. Not everybody, but you see it more and more often. And obviously in the past, people, they'll leave written records. They sort of get out what they want to say. And I was just sort of blown away at the idea that if the holodeck can simply keep pumping out simulations of people, how does this truly fundamentally mess with our grieving process? I mean, you might miss somebody terribly when they die, but what if your computer could manifest a perfectly rendered, interactive version of them at will, at any time you wanted to see them? I think there's something really amazing, but incredibly disturbing about that idea. We haven't seen Wesley go into the holodeck and recreate his father. We haven't seen... Well, we didn't have a holodeck during the original series, unless you're counting the animated series. But for all the people who died on the Enterprise, not the least of which is Spock, we have fuzzy things about him. We have the videotape running. But this technology, in this future, this technology is a real thing. And just going back and, reading a letter from your grandfather or looking at a picture of somebody, you could actually walk into a room and interact with them. And that's fantastic. But I think it's also potentially a big, big problem that you would never really be able to create that separation and let that person go. So I don't know what to do with that, but it sat with me in a really strange way after watching this.
I guess you would have to assume that there are social norms to be dealt with, right? I mean, that somebody would have to step in and go, okay, dude, this is getting a little creepy. On the other hand, go back to the discussion that we had about Minuet. Is she real? Is the relationship that Riker has with her real? And I think we decided yes and no.
Well, but at a certain point, it doesn't matter because Riker's reaction, his emotional reaction to that is real.
Okay. So then tell me, and I'm not saying what it's going to sound like I'm saying.
Okay.
What's the difference between that and, let's say, it might have been an interesting second season if they had Tasha Yar's living on the holodeck for people. Not living on the holodeck, or is she living on the holodeck at that point? What is she at that point? But let's leave off that. It'd make a great novel if somebody wants to write it. If we establish that they can have relationships on the holodeck with constructs like Dixon Hill and his little friend, or Riker and Minuet, if they're real enough to do that, then why couldn't you say that the relationship with Tasha Yar is real enough? I mean, you say it's important for people to let go, but why would it be exactly?
No, yeah. All right. No, no, you're blowing my mind beyond my original mind blowing.
Well, I thought that's what you were saying, though. I mean,
it kind of is. I mean, yeah. I guess that's the
and that feels wrong to me. Don't misunderstand. Yeah. That feels wrong to me.
Right.
And yet I'm trying to figure out, I mean, why necessarily? Yeah. There are places that let you clone your dog. Mm-hmm. And I think about it from time to time because I love my dog. Now, people may have actually heard some dog noise in this episode because today my dog is not being the most lovable dog in the world, but I love my dog. And every now and then I think I kind of want to do that because I never want to lose this dog. But here's the thing. It's not going to be the same dog. Yeah. If that happens, it wouldn't be the same. And yet there's part of me that just tears my heart out to think about losing him. And if you say, oh, well, there's a way that you don't have to exactly, part of me is like, well, that sounds good. But then I think, well, but maybe I don't want that. Or maybe there are other dogs that I'm supposed to, to be around. Or maybe, maybe. It's technology is actually, it's hard to say screw up. I'm not going to say technology is going to screw up our ability to function. I will say there's a possibility it's going to change how we function quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I'm the person who goes into that holodeck and, again, have completely free access, interact with whomever I want, whenever I want, even if that means regenerating a facsimile of somebody who died a day ago, a week ago, a century ago, does that then mess with my ability to comprehend the finality of death for myself? Because I seemingly from my end, well, these people who died never died because I can go in and have any conversation I want with them at any time.
Right.
I'm with you. There's something about this that doesn't feel right, that actually feels wrong.
Yeah.
Emotionally. And yet here it is, in the scene, Tasha Yar is see-through and clearly the hologram is emitted by some kind of thing that she's standing on.
Yeah.
But we know what the holodeck can do.
Right.
We've met Minuet.
Yes.
And holodeck technology will only get better and better as things go along. So, yeah, this just left a truly bizarre thing for me to contemplate.
If you don't have a sense of your own mortality, though, I mean, is the concern that you're going to just fly yourself into a sun? I mean,
no, I don't think it's that.
Okay. Because I'm not sure. I mean, one of two things. I mean, boiling it all down very simply, and I apologize, and this is a way oversimplification, and I get that. And maybe someday someone will write a psychological treatise about what I'm about to say. I don't know. If you don't have a clear sense of your mortality, then it seems to me one of two things happen. Either you die and you didn't have a clear sense of your mortality and nothing happens after that, or you die and you go to heaven, or you go to hell, or you go to whatever the afterlife is, and it doesn't matter because you're still there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going until you're not going anymore. And so for you to say, okay, well, if I can talk to all these people, then do I have a clear sense of my mortality? Are you happier for having a clear sense of your mortality? I mean, does it matter? I contemplate mortality so much more as I get older. And it kind of bums me out, honestly. Now, on the one hand, you can say, well, then that, you know, that turns your crank. That makes you, you know, go out and do more stuff. That makes you go out and be, you know, better or be, I don't know. That makes you go out and like try things because you know that there's going to be a point where you're not going to be able to do that. But does that necessarily make me happier or better? If I didn't have a clear sense that I was going to die, I would, you know, still be walking around until I'm not walking around anymore.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
I do. Well, and okay, to be clear, there is a distinction between this idea of the holodeck that is creating a facsimile based on whatever the knowledge the holodeck can pull together, as opposed to we pull a Dr. Roger Corby and we move not necessarily a consciousness, but a recreation, you know, all the neurological pathways are the same, whatever. That, say, being stored in the Enterprise computer and that being allowed to recreate itself into a holographic form. Well, I mean, maybe just the difference in the technology is... Don't
even do the Corby facsimile, though. Do Spock's brain.
Sure.
It was Spock's brain.
Sure.
It was Spock's brain running that machine. So, hey, you know, it could be like Futurama. You know, where you have all the heads in the jars.
Right,
you just slot one in, and that's, you know, that's who's on the holodeck.
Yeah.
This is a fun episode.
Sure.
It's kind of funny, actually.
Sure. Fun is one word. Ken.
Fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
You're not having fun? It's weird because Tasha Yar was very much a maligned character for so much of this, and yet her passing brings up a tremendous amount of stuff. I got to say really quickly, so have you written out what you want people to read when you die?
No.
Yeah. See, it's kind of weird. This is actually something I think about quite a bit because I had a friend who was a podcaster, and somebody that I met in real life, got to know him actually before I started listening to his show. A really great guy. And the problem was he was kind of hit or miss about his shows. He would do a show and then he wouldn't do a show for a month, and so you never knew what was going on with him really. And then we found out that he died. And it was nothing. There was no, I mean, it's just like he's there, he's talking to you, and then all of a sudden he's not there anymore. And so this whole idea of, recording your thoughts for posterity is actually something that has occurred to me for like the past 8 years when I wasn't thinking that much about mortality, because, there was this voice that just suddenly wasn't there anymore. Yeah. At the same time, what do you say and to whom do you say it? And there really does, it feels like when you think about it, like when I've thought about doing it just based on his experience or based on my experience of having lost him, it just seems like hubris. I mean, it seems like, wow, really? You're going to record your thoughts for posterity? Like posterity is going to give a rat's,
Yeah,
There's something kind of... You're not having fun, John? Good times.
We laugh because otherwise
yes,
we'd be crying.
Yeah, because that noise you hear is the howling void screaming for you.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, but think about this, okay? Every time you go online and update your status on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, I mean, you're creating this biography of yourself that a more advanced computer could come along and reconstruct you day by day.
Yeah. Let's go much simpler than that, though. And it occurs to me as we're having this discussion, for everybody who complains about the pictures of food, and for everybody who complains about the woman in line in front of me as being really rude comments, all of this is really just people going, I'm still here.
Yeah, totally.
That's what it is. A picture of my food is, look at me, I still get to eat.
Right. Yeah, and for that I will not apologize.
Yeah. So there. Yeah. So chicken and waffles for everybody. I know you can't have them, but I'm just letting you know that I'm still out here and still able to enjoy this. You want to move off the mortality talk?
Yeah.
Good. Let's please.
All right. There was one thing that I want to hit about Armus, and it was interesting. The whole idea of Armus, which I feel like you can either love or hate the way that it is rendered as an oil slick. But I thought it was kind of a strange and interesting choice. It's kind of this mythological construct. The Titans created him manifest from their own undesirable traits. And, for starters, for me, and I've said this before on the show, it's a little more fi, and I like more sci in my sci-fi, but that's okay. There's something about that whole idea that's kind of mythological, a big operatic, sweeping ideas that a super advanced godlike race could just shed itself of its undesirable qualities and make that a thing, make that a physical thing, But if there's one thing that we learned from Star Trek, it's that denying your negative side only meets with worse consequences. Kirk learned it in Enemy Within, and he certainly never forgot it all the way through Star Trek V, because I said before, he needs his pain.
Yeah. I kind of disagree with you.
Okay. Lay it on me.
Well, I mean, yes, something negative happens, but it's not felt by the people who shed it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, no, yeah, they're gone. Yeah. But here's the thing. They may have died out very quickly after they got rid of their negative traits because they needed that.
They might have, but they also might have gotten rich and happy and, lived like wonderful lives forever. That, idiot who keeps buzzing the Enterprise with his windows rolled down and the stereo cranked may be the Titans.
That's the Titans.
I mean, there may be those guys because they got nothing now. Nothing holds them back. Now they're just 100% happy. They are like the Tony Robbins of the universe.
I will take my universe, Ken.
They've let go of all the negativity. I wanted to liken it to Enemy Within as well, but there's absolutely no indication that the people who left Armus where he is suffered any ill effects. And so, yeah, I thought of Enemy Within. And because we had that whole thing where Kirk was walking around with sort of, was it Alt Kirk and Logie Kirk, right? I mean, we had his sort of ugly side and we had his good side, but they needed each other. They were dying without each other. There's no indication that the Titans, if that's what we're going to call them, are dying without Armus. Armus is living forever. Armus is just fine in his hate. I mean, he's not happy, but that's why they got rid of him. Because he was he was bad and unpleasant and icky. And I can't believe, by the way, that you're going with Oil Slick. You live near the Miracle Mile. He's like the La Brea tar pits come to life.
He is the La Brea tar pits.
I wish they had gone. What is that? Is that gasoline? What is that smell that goes along with this thing that's bubbling up from the ooze every now and then?
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Bones of a 6-foot sloth. That's my favorite thing there.
And that's Armus. Now that you mention it.
Yeah.
As an age-old starship captain might say, we've been through death and life together. So what can we carry forward?
Ken, before we finally say goodbye to Tasha Yar, we have to say goodbye to this episode. What we like to do when we say goodbye to an episode is we like to kind of put it all into context and figure out what we learned and whether or not the show holds up. So let's start with that. Let's start with the production itself. Ken, does this episode hold up?
Generally speaking, I'm more forgiving on these things than you. I would say yes. I would say the one thing that doesn't work is when Armus becomes humanoid. If they made it today, he would be CG, and it would probably be better. I applaud them for not trying the CG then, because it would not have worked. But he's a little stiff. I mean, he's very stiff.
Right.
But I like the visual. And when he drags Riker in and we see Riker's face sort of emerge a little bit from the ooze, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, could it be better? Sure, it could be better. I found actually the mat on the holodeck was particularly troubling in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
That last shot of Armus screaming, that overlay, that composting or whatever you call it, compositing.
Compositing, yeah.
That compositing is not great. I don't care. There was a lot that really worked in this episode. Seeing Crusher struggle. We don't usually see the medical people struggle. Sometimes we'll hear the medical people say, I'm having trouble. But, we don't actually see them struggle. And seeing her, I mean, she's doing stuff at this point. I mean, it comes to a point where they know there's no hope. And she's obviously, to liken it in our times, it's that scene on ER where they, just keep putting the paddles to somebody's chest long after it's dead. And other people have actually stopped participating at this point because it crosses a line someplace from trying to save somebody to just desperation. And we actually saw that with Crusher in this episode. Not quite as graphic as you see it on ER or something like that, except they are shooting electrodes into her head. And she's obviously pushing it beyond a point where they would normally do it.
Right.
Because she's just desperate at that point. And that works really well. I like the scene between Worf and Yar. They hang on her a little too long, but it's her last episode, and so I understand why they would do that. I mean, I think production-wise, this episode does hold up. Even Will Wheaton was not insufferable in this episode. I mean, it works. I mean, to me, this episode works. A little cheap, a little cheesy, but it's the late 80s, and it's television. And, production values get better as we go. So I'm willing to cut it some slack on that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, the cheesy and dated stuff, it is what it is. And you kind of have to get past that in this episode. I mean, look, the first time I watched this, however many years ago, I felt like I was kind of done with Tasha Yar. I just didn't really care about the character anymore. I wasn't invested in her anymore. But this time around, I really felt like I cared, and I really felt more emotionally invested in the episode. Maybe that's just a side effect of doing Mission Log.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason it really struck me emotionally, and I liked watching the characters, and I liked getting more involved in the story. And like I said before, the whole premise kind of feels like this bigger than life, this operatic Shakespearean thing, this idea that you could have a creature manifest from your psyche. It almost goes back to Forbidden Planet. The id monster is this thing that the Krell were trying to get out of themselves, and it just came back to haunt them. Now, we don't see the good side of the Titans here. We only see what they left behind. So, Ken, if you're right, and they're just a bunch of giant Tony Robbinses running around the universe, so be it. But here's the thing. I really applaud them for killing off the Tasha character, not because you and I have taken shots at the poorly written version of that character, but because Star Trek has had a hard time killing anyone and keeping them dead. There are other shows in more modern storytelling where if you kill somebody, particularly a major character, that's a major event for the show, and the other characters have to deal with it.
Yeah.
We did it with Spock, and we did it exceptionally well with Spock, but this is the only other time that we've done that where we've killed off a major character.
And you could even argue that we didn't do it with Spock because, the very next movie, we found him.
We bring him back. Yeah.
Went searching for him, and we found him.
We found him, but this was handled well. And if there was some debate about how and when to kill off Tasha, well, it happened suddenly and horrifically. And like you said, that scene of trying to save her was really well done and necessary. Yeah. So I liked it. There are things that don't hold up, but I think overall it does hold up, and I was glad to get to revisit it. But let's talk about messages. We found deep ideas.
Wait, before we get there, I do have to say you mentioned this in the in the first part of the show. I totally applaud Gene Roddenberry's decision to make her death quick.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, the whole, the lingering and the waiting and the whole, getting the chance to actually say what you want to say right before you pass away. There are things that we're used to, and they can certainly be tear jerkers, and they can certainly pull at the heartstrings. There's something absolutely brutal, though, just about, oh, yeah, look, there she goes again. She's going to run off and do, just like, that's it. That's your goodbye. Now, I mean, writing the thing at the end where she recorded the thing for everybody is so, I mean, you do get a little bit of softening once you get to that. Right. But yeah, the fact that there was not even a moment of her going, right. Or anything. It's just like, she's walking around. She's no longer walking around. Yeah. That's a deft bit of storytelling, I think.
She's security. So that's the way it happens. Yeah, that's the way it happened to everybody that was on Kirk's security team. So
yeah. Now, as far as messages, I mean, I didn't feel like there was a message. I mean, if we had seen that the Titans sort of suffered from having left Armus there, I mean, you could do sort of a bigger thing of like, so clean up your mess, boys and girls. Don't leave something laying around because somebody else will get hurt. Well, guess what? That's somebody else, and what do I care?
Yeah.
That's not
right,
be.
right.
And, we should all be that person who's like, well, no, we want to leave the planet better than we, found it for the people who come after us. But so many of us just don't really, this styrofoam's not going to float back to me while I'm here. So we're not going to worry about it too much. It's hard for me to see that that's a message because it doesn't affect the people that did it.
No.
There were little messages throughout, though. I mean, there's just a fantastic bit of character study, I think, from Picard when he's talking to Armus about how evil Armus thinks he is. Armus is like, I can't remember what the exact quote was. Something to the effect of, a spirit is not free that serves something evil. That's not the exact quote, but it was something like that. And Armus says, I don't serve evil, I am evil. And Picard's like, no, you're not evil. You think you're evil, but you're not. Evil would be submitting to you, surrendering our freedom and our dignity instead of defying you. That's a great quote that could be applied in so many different ways and in so many different places, it seems to me. I mean, standing up for what's right, standing up for what you believe in, not succumbing to somebody else's will simply to get by. And it's throwaway. It's not throwaway, but I mean, it's not the point of the episode. Crusher admitting fear but not giving in is another. It's not the point of the episode, but it's a good moment, and it sort of parallels that one from Picard. It's earlier. It's when Armus is making Data point the phaser at Crusher's head, and he says, "Are you not afraid?" And she says, "Yeah, I'm afraid."
Yeah.
So what? Yes, I'm afraid, and there's but I'm not gonna give in to you just because you're trying to scare me. Data's contemplation at the end is interesting. It's a good character moment. It's not a message necessarily, except, and sort of how we think about mortality, how we handle that kind of thing. Yeah. There's not an overall message, though. I mean, this is not a capitalism run amok, don't eat paint, drugs are bad episode. I mean, it's, right. but I mean, there are things to pull out from it. At least those are some that I found. What about you?
Yeah, I'll go back to that moment that you mentioned about Crusher, because it seemed to me that everybody in this episode, whether it's the Enterprise characters or Armus, everybody has to look fear in the eye. Armus's fear is his loneliness and the very nature of his existence. The Enterprise crew are constantly being toyed with and tortured. There is the element of the fear of death because they just watched Tasha die. So everybody in this episode has to face fear somehow and then decide how to deal with that. Now, here we are faced with this enlightened, more, say, emotionally balanced crew that, had it been Kirk turning the photon torpedoes on Armus, that would have been a very different story. But we are meant to pick up something from Picard, from his handling of Armus, and just saying, no, I'm not going to play your game of giving into the fear that you were trying to instill in me. I'm still going to try to talk to you and get what I want, be tough and be strong, but I'm not going to become what you expect me to become because you've had however many centuries and millennia to be fearful on your own.
That is actually a theme all the way through the episode as well. I mean, when Picard's like, we're out, and Armus says, wait a minute, I've got Riker and I've got the two people in the shuttle. I thought you cared about them. And Picard's like, yeah, I do care about them. So let me see them. But if you're not going to do that, I'm not going to play.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is it's wow. It's almost a we don't negotiate with terrorists moment.
Yeah.
We don't give in.
Yeah.
We're not gonna bow to your will just because you hold something over us, because then we're not free. You hold nothing over us. Yes, you've got things that would maybe that we would certainly like, and we want to take care of our people, but you don't get to do whatever you want just because you're holding a few of them.
Yeah.
Man, this is a rich episode. This is a surprisingly, I would imagine that there's something that we missed that people may think that we shouldn't have, because we get those messages and keep them coming. Facebook, Skype, and Twitter. The handle is Mission Log Pod if you want to reach us in one of those places, or you can call us 323-522-5641. That number again, 323-522-5641. You can email us missionlog@roddenberry.com. We have a fantastic website for you to check out. It includes the discovered documents that John was mentioning earlier and a bunch of other stuff too. That is missionlogpodcast.com. And then there are two other places you can find us online, trekmovie.com and Trek FM. That is at trek.fm. Remember, any place you get in touch with us, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log.
Hey, Ken, we may no longer have Tasha Yar, but I can tell you that next week, we'll always have Paris.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages, by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. I don't have the kind of time Tasha had, so let me just say to all of you, you're a shining star. And thanks. I'll make individual recordings for each of you soon. End transmission.